Joining me now is Simon Dyakowski. He's president and CEO at Aztec Minerals. Thanks for joining us, Simon. How are you?
Hey, doing well today. Thank you very much for having me on the program, Mark.
For sure. Let's start, if we could, with a snapshot from you, an overview on the company's two main assets. You've got Tombstone, the past producing gold silver discovery in Arizona, and then Cervantes, the gold discovery in Mexico.
Yeah, so dual asset company, as you mentioned, we have split our focus pretty equally over the two projects over the last 4 years. So we've made discoveries at both. But more recently, we focused in on the Tombstone project. So this is on private land in southeastern Arizona, a very mining-friendly state in the United States, especially when you're on private land. And so what we're dealing with at Tombstone is most of the old patents of the historic Tombstone Silver District, which was in production with many underground high-grade silver mines in the late 1800s all the way through to the early part of the 20th century, and then again operated as an open pit heap leach gold silver mine in the 1980s. So we're the first group to come in since the 80s and expand on the mineralization footprint there, which has both elements of shallow oxide gold silver mineralization and then high grade in an underground context. And as a bonus, we have a very strong CRD or carbonate replacement style mineralization target at depth. So that's a brief intro to Tombstone, where we've been very active this year and expect to be drilling in the fourth quarter of 2024. And not to skip over Cervantes, this is a project that has also seen significant drilling. This is a large gold copper porphyry property in eastern Sonora, Mexico. We're surrounded by gold mines operated by Canadian companies, including Mulatos, which is owned by Alamos Gold, La India, which is owned by Agnico Eagle. And we're about 50 kilometers from those two projects. We have drilled 12,000 meters there, and we've made a significant gold oxide discovery in a very target-rich environment, much larger land package down there that we have yet to explore.
All right, very good, Simon, and we'll get back to Cervantes in just a moment. Let's stick with Tombstone. You said that the team has identified some new targets through some what you've called robust surface sampling, and you hinted at drilling coming in the back half of the year. So what is the plan, and what do you think the potential is to increase the size of the zone?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have focused our work at Tombstone earlier this year and through now on surface sampling, quite a robust program of over 500 samples that we took. They confirmed some of our targets. We've also paired that surface sampling with some geological 3D modeling of some of the riches of the district from yesteryear. And what I mean by that is all of the underground stopes and access tunnels and geology maps. We now all have them in a computer model, and that's driving the potential, we think, to expand on the near surface high-grade gold silver zone. And specifically what we're referring to is the west side target. So we have concentrated our drilling to date of about 6,500 meters in the contention zone. And what we see in our data compilation, in our surface program that we recently completed, and in our geologic modeling is that there's a very compelling reason to go and drill test this model towards the west into some structures that we've identified that historically hosted very high grade gold and silver production from small underground mines in the 1800s. And so we'll be focusing our drilling on those target areas with a view to significantly expanding the mineralized footprint that we've already drilled. So we've had some great results to date. We think this work will support drill testing of our model, which will hopefully expand the mineralization very significantly over to the west side and really put a new perspective on the project as being quite a bit larger than what was previously considered by the market.
Now, Simon, you mentioned just there that Tombstone is a carbonate replacement deposit, a CRD, which, of course, not of course, but as you know, and a lot of people may know that they're often polymetallic, they're often large. We've spoken to Reina Silver about what they're working on in Mexico. But you also say that this deposit is nearby the Taylor deposit, which was owned by Arizona Mining, eventually bought for nearly $2 billion in 2018, I guess it was. So is the ultimate strategy to follow a similar path, prove it out, follow a similar path, and attract a major? Is that sort of the pathway?
Certainly, that is a way that things could go. And just to compare a little bit between the Taylor discovery deposit and Tombstone. So Taylor was a discovery, as you mentioned, made by Arizona Mining in 2015, where they were exploring beneath a well-known past producing silver district known as Hermosa. So that's a very similar comparison that we have. We have the Tombstone Silver District, and at depth, we believe that there are compelling targets for the CRD polymetallic style of mineralization, which typically comprises of silver, lead, zinc, and copper. So we have some very good evidence for that. Just to clarify a little bit, our initial drilling will be focusing on the shallow gold and silver zone because we think that has excellent potential to expand. But as we move through that, there will be opportunities to drill deeper and below the Bisbee Group sediments, which host the gold silver zone that we're currently targeting. So there's a 2,000-meter limestone horizon beneath our current target, and that's what could host the CRD style of mineralization. And when I say could host, we have a fairly decent idea that it does at least host some. There's a historic drill hole underneath our pit target that intersected 7 meters of 9.1% lead zinc back in the late 1980s, uh, and with some silver and copper as well. Very, very strong mineralization in that drill hole. It's never been followed up on, and that intersection is akin to what was discovered initially at Taylor Hermosa. So to supplement that, we have some deep geophysical targets that we I think could tie in with that CRD model. And of course, if that's successful, it definitely changes the game for a little company like Aztec, and it could entice larger players to come in and get involved.
And then, Simon, at Cervantes, the team has drilled nearly 70 holes the past few years, and you said some of the results are quite compelling. So, what work is being done now to evaluate the results and identify new targets?
Well, that's exactly what we're doing is evaluating and identifying new targets. We just finished that drill program really in at the end of the first quarter, so we've had a few months now to model everything and think about where we would like to expand. So we're in the desktop phase of that exploration work right now, planning it. It does happen to be the rainy season right now, starting in Sonora, the monsoon season. So there's a bit of a break that we'll be taking on the ground. And the idea is that later this year, early next year, we'll get on the ground and start to work up the expansion drill targets. And we see plenty of them, particularly to the east of the California zone target. We see some very prospective surface indications of mineralization that we would like to drill test potentially next year with a further expansion program to build on that 12,500 meter drill database that we have already. So it's looking like a 2025 project, but we have our hands full, obviously, at Tombstone in the interim.
Now, you mentioned Agnico Eagle is a neighbor, and so is Alamos Gold. Alamos owns about 9% of the shares of Aztec Minerals. You've also said that majors will soon be hungry for deals. So, with Cervantes, for example, would you have to prove that out more, or is there the potential that you get a knock on the door tomorrow? Could it be that imminent?
That is a great question. I do think the majors will be hungry for deals. It's been very slow in terms of M&A in the mining sector over the past couple of years, but I think you're starting to see that pick up. I mean, there was a big acquisition of Osisko the other day for about $2 billion. Obviously, a bit of a larger company, but you're starting to see the money flow down. And I think with the gold price hovering around $2,500 and the silver price historically lagging a little bit, that should create some impetus for the bigger players to have to accelerate their development pipeline by acquiring juniors and projects to sustain their future cash flows. So is it a question of making a bigger discovery? I mean, obviously that would help, but I think we've drilled a lot already to date, taking this from a fairly grassroots prospect to something that now has significant drilling and discovery on it. So I wouldn't uh, um, say that we haven't done enough, but we plan to do more and to grow the assets that we have under our umbrella here, and hopefully create compelling value for our shareholders.
Speaking of shareholders and looking at the stock, you think it's undervalued. A lot of CEOs might think that of their shares. What is your impression of what the market thinks of the Aztec story and how they're viewing the stock?
Yeah, I think the market's been quite supportive of what we're doing. I mean, it's obviously a bear market. Very tough to raise money for a lot of juniors. We have been able to raise money. We just closed a $2.5 million financing, so I think that's good validation that investors are keen to see us continue to drill for additional discoveries at our projects. I am not a licensed investment advisor, so I obviously cannot advise anybody on share prices and things like that. But I personally think our shares are undervalued. I invested money in each of our last private placements, some of them at much higher levels. And I think with the gold price now, breaking out, and with our project now being at a very, I think, significant inflection point where we have already demonstrated discovery, but now growth of that discovery, I think, will be the catalyst that our shareholders need to see some appreciation in the value going forward.
And just lastly, Simon, you mentioned the gold price near an all-time high. You've got silver looking pretty comfortable, just below 30 an ounce or so. And you mentioned some of the catalysts as well that investors should look for. So can you sum it up for us in terms of the investment case for Aztec Minerals?
Yeah, absolutely. So Aztec, becoming a shareholder of Aztec Minerals provides you with exposure to, not one, but two compelling discoveries that have already been made. And they're now at a stage where we're fully funded to drill, to expand them. And the macro picture appears to be, at the time of we're speaking here in late summer of 2024, appears to be ripe for some of that price appreciation in the commodity price to trickle down to the junior. So we're right there. We are aggressive. We are going to be drilling very shortly here in the fourth quarter of 2024, and we have potential to discover high grade gold and silver at Tombstone, and to grow our discovery at Cervantes in the coming years. So I think it's all happening for us, and our market cap's just around $20 million Canadian. It's a pretty ground floor valuation from my perspective.
All right. Well, thank you for the update today, Simon, and we'll talk to you later.
Sounds great, Mark. Thank you for the opportunity.
That is Simon Dyakowski. He is the president and CEO over at Aztec Minerals. Our thanks to him, and thanks to you for watching. We'll talk to you next time.